following is a video from my personal channel, Danny Lerman. If you want to watch more, go subscribe and wait because this is the only one so far. How does it feel to realize that you're in a cult, and how do you get out of one? That is a story that Lloyd Evans, cult survivor, promises you to tell. Lloyd Evans is the most successful YouTuber currently creating videos about the Jehovah's Witness religion. With over 100,000 subscribers and thousands of videos, he's probably the first result to any Jehovah's Witness looking up videos to debunk their beliefs. But Lloyd isn't just the most successful Jehovah's Witness content creator. He's also, by far, the most controversial. Lloyd's waking up story starts, according to him at least, with his wife catching him messaging other women, sharing explicit content online. We don't know how far that went. What we do know is that it went far enough to be reproved inside of the religion. The religion has a system where anytime you do anything they deem wrong, you have to confess to the elders and face shunning. Jehovah's Witnesses obviously fear this like no other, especially if they're also narcissistic and can't handle any disapproval from other people. The only thing worse for a Jehovah's Witness would be to become an apostate or to leave the religion altogether, something that even a repentant child abuser is above of. And Lloyd knew that when he placed the entire decision on his wife. Back then, his wife only knew that Lloyd had been texting with other women, and it's not like Lloyd was gonna confess to more. Instead, he did something quite sinister. He told his wife that if he didn't agree to pretend like nothing had happened, then he would stumble out of the faith, and it would all be her fault.
My marriage was on the rocks, and it was because I had been contacting women online. I'd basically developed this kind of learned behavior from when I was single, because Jehovah's Witnesses have to deal with a lot of sexual repression. They are told that they're not allowed to masturbate. They're told that they're only allowed to date other witnesses. They're told that they're not allowed to have sex before marriage. I remember having a conversation where I said, well, we could try and work this out between us and just carry on as far as everyone else is concerned, carry on as though it hasn't happened. And that will enable me to kind of sustain my faith. And the other thing that we could do is come clean and go to the elders, but that will take us down another path, which I fear could take me away from the faith.
We just started and Lloyd is already showing how extremely manipulative he can be, unwilling to face the consequences of his actions like a big boy, and instead threatening to commit spiritual suicide if the truth came out, which we'll learn is a pattern of behavior for him. And we know for a fact that Lloyd was lying about leaving the religion because he himself confessed that once everything had happened and he had to live with the consequences of it, he actually didn't want to go through the spiritual suicide after all, and instead wanted to regain the notoriety he had among his fellow Jehovah's Witnesses.
Anna and I decided that we would move back. She would move back to Croatia and I would come with her, and we would basically try and start afresh in Croatia. And I managed to convince myself that that was something that would be really positive for my faith, because it would be like a blank canvas. I could start from zero and just try and slowly, work on getting my privileges back. Basically, that's what I wanted to do.
Ladies, remember, when your guy is telling you that he's gonna hurt himself, if you react negatively towards his own abusive behavior, that is a red flag. Narcissists care way too much about themselves to actually go through it. What they mean is that if you put their behavior on display and make them face the consequences for their own actions, then they'll suffer, and they're trying to blame you for it. Either Lloyd was lying and trying to manipulate his wife into not making him face consequences for his actions, or it's thanks to his wife catching him cheating and making him face consequences for his actions that he actually woke up, and he owes his entire career to his wife, basically. According to him, it was once they left the UK and moved into Croatia when he actually started losing faith, having a spiritual awakening by going to meetings in a different language and realizing that he didn't actually believe in the religion anymore. So one day he stays behind lying with some excuse and writes down the reasons why.
Actually, I thought I'm going to write down a list of everything I don't agree with and all of the grievances that I had. And it ended up being 9 grievances. I called it my 9 grievances.
And here you start to see how he sees himself. Writing down the issues you have with your belief system is a normal and healthy thing that most of us do when we're waking up from indoctrination. I remember writing that down on a napkin somewhere just to help me process my own thoughts and to help me think my way out of it. I don't remember giving that napkin a name, which is what Lloyd did, because he clearly considered it very important.
I called it my 9 grievances.
Weirdly enough, in that video, he shares this story about an elder worrying about his wife and taking his wife aside, whom we'll start calling Diana because that's her name, and talking to her about what he perceived to be abuse from Lloyd's part. Lloyd frames this as the elders trying to go after him for no reason, but it's telling that he decided to still share the story with everyone, almost like he felt the need to share his version of events to defend himself.
What later happened was a new elder moved into our congregation from Bethel, and he had a far more kind of by-the-book approach to undertaking his duties. So this guy actually dragged my wife to one side at one of the meetings and said, I know that Lloyd treats you like a cloth for cleaning the floor, so you need to tell us what he's doing that's wrong, basically. And Diana was just totally shocked that some guy who didn't even know me, we literally didn't know each other, and he'd reached this conclusion that I was treating her badly, which just wasn't true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the elders know that from now on I refuse to meet with them until they apologize for what they've done, because what they've done is manifestly wrong. Once they've apologized, then I'll meet with them, knowing full well that they would never, elders never apologize, folks. They just don't. So I knew I was safe then.
Again, he can't stop hitting that self-report button like no other, fully admitting that he was leaving the responsibility for his actions to other people and finding ways to use the situation in his favor. And after shifting responsibility, he started to get involved in the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses community, reaching out to the most influential people he could find. Paul Grundy from ExJW Facts, a huge resource for anyone trying to leave their religion. Paul turned down Lloyd's submission, telling him that he would post it on the forum instead, and here we see him getting what every narcissist craves: attention.
And he posted it on the forum, and I saw people talking about it. I was like, I've got to get involved in this conversation.
Look at how he literally jumps up and down his seat in excitement like a little kid who just got the attention of the adults. I'm serious, it's quite adorable. You can watch the whole video, it's over half an hour long, and you will never see him as happy as he is when he reminisces about the very first time he got the attention from the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. Narcissists are addicted to attention, and it's quite telling to see that Lloyd started to get involved in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, not because he wanted to share his story or because he wanted to help people, but because he got attention. And this would put him in the path that he would be on until today: his search for the approval of the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. That is how narcissists act. They make sure that you like them because then they can use you. That's why they can't handle rejection very well either, because rejecting them means you're out of their control and hence unpredictable at best and against them at worst. And at this point, Diana was also waking up. Lloyd takes a lot of credit for that, but I think no one can wake people up but themselves. So Lloyd decides to go for more attention and starts making YouTube videos under a false name, because, you know, he's a coward, and receives some success. His first videos were as bad as anyone's first videos are, and he took a while to improve, but there was simply no other ExJW content out there. Lloyd had discovered a tiny and unexploited niche that could shower him with attention and give him positive reinforcement just by writing articles in their false name. And soon, he felt like the attention he was getting was deserving of its own video.
Hello there, my name is John Cedars, or at least that's the name I write under. And I wanted to do a video as quickly as possible just to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been sending me emails and messages and comments on Facebook and other forums, words of encouragement, words of support, words of fellow feeling.
That's Lloyd's first vlog. Until then, he had only posted clips of other people, very amateurishly put together, but this was the very first time he decided that he was going to make a video about himself. And it worked. People in the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses community are often pretty welcoming to other people and will look past amateurishly made content that makes you cringe in retrospect. Why are you using that background? And Lloyd couldn't get enough of this approval, often making a huge part of his videos about how thankful he was for getting this positive attention and for the stories that people felt comfortable sharing with him. The content wasn't great. Most people's content sucks when they're starting. He had audio issues, his digital camera seemed to be from the Soviet era, and he had terrible timing because he refused to cut his videos to prepare for them in advance. So you see every rambling second of him presenting an argument and stumbling between rebuttals until the video ends. It's like seeing a toddler finally rescue a cone of ice cream from the pavement, and you're happy for the kid, of course, but you kinda wish you didn't have to see that. Don't let your babies eat ice cream from the pavement. Lloyd could have eaten a shard of glass is what I'm saying. As he started making videos and posting content online, he got found out by the elders, and that only means one thing. He'd get disfellowship from the religion, meaning he'd be shunned by everyone inside the religion. Weirdly enough, he decided to not even attempt to record the meeting he had with the elders when they decided to disfellowship him, despite the obvious appeal of the potential content, leaving us only with his version of events that basically portrayed him as a brave man who was disfellowshipped for doing nothing outside apostasy. Don't think about those spousal abuse allegations, it was only apostasy. And it's telling that even then, he feels the need to pretend like he has any control over the situation by threatening the elders with vague consequences that would obviously never materialize, which we will see is a pattern with Lloyd.
I said, right, well, there is something I need you to be aware of. And I explained about my parents-in-law who are both in need of, for various reasons, my help and my wife's help. I explained to them that I have no interest at this time of setting up a Croatian website. I went through the list of things I could do, basically, if I wanted to. Chase down members of the congregation, put flyers in people's windshields, stand outside conventions, go on the television, go on the radio, go in the newspapers. All of these things I could very easily do in Croatia, but won't do for no other reason than because we live with our parents-in-law who depend on us, and it would upset them. If my parents-in-law are coerced into shunning us, I will no longer have any reason not to do all of those things I've just mentioned. The first thing they said was, well, we can only tell them to do what the Bible says. And I started getting a bit wound up at that point. I was thinking, that means they're going to tell them to shun us. I was like, this hasn't worked. My threat hasn't worked.
Did you notice how he said he got worked up when he thought his threat was not working? As we said, narcissists hate when people are not under their control. From this point on, he delved into what he called activism, which basically means he filmed himself with the same potato camera he was using, talking off the cuff about whatever topic he thought of, like answering comments on camera, rebutting some random piece of Jehovah's Witnesses doctrine, reminiscing about his experiences in the cult, or just sharing wherever he had been thinking at the moment. Now, these were as unengaging and amateurishly made as you would expect a boomer would do. And they weren't getting that many views because they were still kind of boring, okay? What do you want from me? It's a guy in his late 30s talking to a camera by himself. What? I'm in my early 30s, but then he got his first hit. The Jehovah's Witnesses started making videos featuring governing body members, aka the leaders of the religion. And he addressed it in vlog 47. Since this was a drastic change for the religion, and since this time there was video instead of just text, this video got a ton of views compared to the rest of them. And here is where we see Lloyd's videos finally popping up. This was new content that the Jehovah's Witnesses were putting that no one was addressing on YouTube. He started sharing his thoughts on every single JW broadcasting, and since both Jehovah's Witnesses and Lloyd talk at the same speed...
But how foolish, how reckless, say, may none of us even slightly think this way, and may we help others, and especially our young ones, to never foolishly reason this way.
So we have this story about Wheeler, and the moral of the story is that witnesses who decide that they're going to live normal lives outside of the organisation are basically like dogs who run away from home.
And since his videos were pretty much talking about whatever he was thinking at the moment, these started to translate into hour-long or 2-hour-long videos that he made month to month, along with his regular vlogs where he could rant about wherever he was thinking of at the moment. And he had early success with the JW broadcasting videos, since this was the very first time that people could see the leaders of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and former members of the religion preferred to see them on YouTube with a guy making fun of them than by themselves on jw.org. He also started doing interviews and videos about the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, but the only thing he got views besides his JW broadcasting videos were the leaks. You see, many Jehovah's Witnesses are captives inside their religion, pretending to go along just so the Jehovah's Witnesses family and friends that they have don't shun them. And some of them work in the headquarters and had access to private information like early looks at the videos they were developing, news about layoffs, and confidential letters. And since Lloyd was the only person talking about this on YouTube, he was getting a ton of those leaks, which many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses wanted to see. Very slowly, he started to develop more engaging videos, sometimes even scripting them and having other people voice over clips and chapters. But besides making videos and writing articles for his website, he was writing a huge memoir on debunking of the religion, where he tells his story and uses a lot of information lifted from JW Facts to explain why the religion is wrong. I've tried reading it, but I'm not gonna pretend that I know what it says in detail. Suffice to say, this book was self-published. No editor was involved in the production of this book, and you can tell. It's almost as well made as his videos, okay? It's his first book, don't be mean. Wanna get a taste of it? Well, Lloyd made a trailer for it.
The world is a wonderful place. It bursts with variety and potential. Sure, life has its share of pain and suffering, but humanity overall trudges on undaunted, ever striving to better itself, ever pondering what lies beyond the horizon. Sadly, not everything Watchtower asks witnesses to do or believe is entirely loving or beneficial to them or others. I know this because I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses for 23 years before officially leaving on December 29th, 2013.
This wasn't just to announce that he was making a book. This was to raise funds for him to self-publish it. Because remember, nobody picked it up for publication. And he needed $1,500 to pay someone to make this cover and to pay for an initial run so he could sell it physically. Now that Lloyd was a self-published author, he could get the attention of larger organizations. And he spent quite a while calling newspapers and other news outlets trying to get interviewed. And it worked, as we can see from this clip of an interview he had with BBC about the Russian ban on the Jehovah's Witnesses. He clearly realized that every time something big happened, journalists would be looking for people to interview. So he's always sure to release a quick video about whatever is on the news and use his self-given author and activist titles to land an interview. He wrote a second book, this one quite slim compared to the first one, telling people how to escape the religion, which went to get over $5,000 on Indiegogo because the community is so welcoming, I guess. And by this point, he could have gone to a publishing house to publish it, but he still decided to self-publish it. And I honestly can't tell if it is because he wants to avoid the criticism that an editor would give him, which, would be a lot, or if he simply doesn't know how to become a published author. At this point, he started using his experience on YouTube and his status as a self-published author to reach more notorious people to interview. Whenever there was a documentary released about the witnesses, he would manage to get interviews with the people working in the documentary. Remember, most people don't care about the Jehovah's Witnesses or what they've done, so I assume the people behind the documentaries were just grateful to speak to whoever wanted to hear about them. He also started to collab with some YouTubers from the atheist community, like Cosmic Skeptic and Telltale, and he started doing some basic editing to his videos to improve them, although his presentation styles and skills were still lagging behind a little bit. Nevertheless, his efforts ended up paying off when he managed to get involved in the UK's ICSA inquiry about CSA and the religion, becoming a co-participant to recommend questions to the investigation. He also got involved in the Leah Remini Scientology documentary, talking about the shunning that happens in the Jehovah's Witness religion.
Take Scientology, add 8 million members, and you've got Jehovah's Witnesses.
By this point, Lloyd was at the peak of his career. He had a portfolio of books, media appearances, and interviews, giving him the credentials to gain surface-level credibility with pretty much anybody. By now, he had been doing videos and updating his website for a few years, had appeared in a high-profile documentary, had around 50,000 subscribers, and had been making himself some space in the atheist YouTube community. He had also made his own studio in his in-law's basement, which is where he lived, which gave him some space to film and edit his videos to make them look more presentable, even if his oratory skills remained somewhat stagnant. And it paid off! At this point, he realized that the community were there to do pretty much anything he couldn't afford or didn't want to do for whatever reason, which include building his daughter's room from the ground up, financing the building of his studio, and even personally driving to his in-laws' house to install AC and a dehumidifier exclusively so he could use his books as background props instead of storing them anywhere else.
If not for the dehumidifier, the bunker's humidity would be around 80%, especially in the summer months, which is not good news for old books. So a viewer of the channel very kindly drove all the way from another European country. I'm being careful to protect his identity. He drove all the way to my home in Croatia and installed a dehumidifier, and he also installed this air conditioning system.
He was also invited to the Faithless Forum in 2021. Along with some of the most notorious atheist content creators on the platform. And going to that forum would be both the height of his game and a mistake that would trigger a series of events that would end up destroying his career. And this is a great chance to talk about Lloyd's channel because he has a pretty unique one, although for all the wrong reasons. When I was doing my research, I wanted to find out how he, a guy with 50,000 subscribers, could so effectively leverage and monetize a community and gather funds to the tune of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars just so he could self-publish a book that he could publish for free on Amazon, or build a dedicated studio just so he could film more comfortably. And I think the main reason why he's able to do this so well is because he takes his work extremely seriously, almost to comedic effect. The comedy is never about him. You'll never find him making a joke at his own expense. He's too important for that. But there are still some comedy that, you know what, I think it's just better if I just show you. This video is called The Selters Escape, and it's not supposed to be satire. It's supposed to be taken seriously. Lloyd had contact with a Bethelite, a person working for the cult compound that was about to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses. Instead of just having a conversation with the Bethelite, he thought it would be more exciting if he instead showed clips from a couple of days prior when he was talking to Kim Silvio, whom he referred to as the head of operations at JW Watch and legal advisor.
Let's go back in time to a couple of days ago when I was in my bunker studio in Croatia with my video editor Tibor planning this trip. You see, Selters is unlike any other branch office of Jehovah's Witnesses in the world. As ex-Jehovah's Witness activists, we are filming here at our peril, as a colleague of mine explained in a call from Australia. Kim, thank you so much for joining us. You are obviously the head of operations at JW Watch, and you're also a legal advisor.
And he asks her how dangerous it is to go pick up a Bethelite off work and tries to play it up as if it's a big thing.
As you know, we're planning a trip to Germany to pick up a friend who's a Bethelite. I've never done any filming in Germany before, and I'm kind of conscious about not breaking any German laws, especially since we're going to be potentially filming in or around a Bethel complex. Do you have any advice for us?
And then he films the road trip of him driving with his editor to Germany so we don't miss him chatting and texting in the car.
So I've just had a message from Ben. Obviously, we're just done filming now. We've just been doing some B-roll around Selters.
He then contacts his extraction driver. And it's here when you see just how serious he wants you to think picking someone up is.
So, are you ready for our mission?
Let's get it on. Oh, Disgraced.
We need this to work. We need this to go off without a hitch.
And all of this drama because, well, Lloyd has a channel with like 50,000 subscribers, so since Jehovah's Witnesses aren't allowed to look up apostate information, they may recognize him because they don't know how he looks like. Wait, that doesn't make sense.
So I've got the recovery location programmed in. I'm ready to lead our little convoy to essentially freedom.
He then has like 10 minutes of him waiting for the extraction driver to pick up the Bethelite and waiting in the car for some reason. All, of course, accompanied by what I assume is the first result in Google when you type out dramatic music.
No, I've told him exactly where. I'm going to leave you now. Take care.
He called this whole thing a documentary. And this isn't the only time that he called a video that he filmed outside a documentary. According to him, this is his documentary.
We're within touching distance of a place that has basically defined my life, defined Deanna's life, and as Jessica speaks up, is even impacting on her life already, and Jessica's not even a JW. So.
And this is his documentary too.
Unless your name's Daenerys Targaryen, the closest you'll ever get to riding on a dragon is on a theme park ride like this one. That's because, unlike dinosaurs, flying, fire-breathing medieval monsters never existed.
Now, am I gonna sit here and tell you that those aren't documentaries? Well, no, of course not. The definition of a documentary is a movie or a television or radio program that provides a factual record or report. So these videos are technically a documentary, as well as the video that you're watching now, because I decided it's a documentary script. All I'm saying is Lloyd is as much of a documentarian as Tommy Wiseau and Neil Breen are film directors. They actually have pretty similar editing skills and styles. But according to him, he's not a YouTuber or even a documentarian. He is a filmmaker.
We're filmmakers, we're just documenting what's happening and we're wondering what organization they're representing.
You see that he has this exaggerated sense of self in everything he does, including how he looks at his work. He doesn't just make videos, he describes himself as an activist who makes life-saving content online. He doesn't just make long reactions to propaganda, he makes feature-length films. And he doesn't call himself an amateur videographer or maybe simply a YouTuber. He calls himself a filmmaker. It's not a coincidence that I mentioned Neil Breen before, because Lloyd's content is the Neil Breen of activism. His videos are often amateurishly shot with no clear direction. He owns expensive equipment, but his videos are basically the same as the videos he used to make when he started, just with better definition and some editing. Just like with the documentary we watched, he often makes extremely long videos that a more talented editor and filmmaker could easily cut into 5 or 10 minutes. And nowhere is this more evident than in his Watchtower Accuse Me of Hate Speech videos, where he talks about how the religion tried to kick him out of his ICSA co-participant role by painstakingly reading the whole dossier throughout not 1, not 2, but 7 videos, all meant to examine what one dossier that was thrown out said about him. And I have this theory that at the time, someone told him that he should please cut his videos shorter because he took that advice to heart, except in the other direction. Instead of cutting his commentaries shorter, using snappier editing, or maybe script them in advance, he started making his long commentaries longer so he could splice them up into what he called sushis. Since then, he started making his commentaries longer and longer, and to make editing easier, he reintroduces whatever you're watching over and over again to use that introduction at the beginning of the video, so you feel like he's constantly reminding you what you're watching for no reason.
In this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the JW Broadcasting episode for September 2021. Patrick Lafranca here, a helper to the governing body, taking us through the September JW Broadcasting episode. We've been hearing the story of Aino Kethma, a Jehovah's Witness lady from Estonia. We're watching the lessons from the Watchtower segment in the latest September 2021 JW Broadcasting episode. We're hearing his story in the September 2021 JW Broadcasting episode. We're watching governing body member Tony Morris, who's making a cameo in the September 2021 JW Broadcasting episode. We've been watching the new music video.
And if you ask him why he started slicing his videos into smaller videos, it's not because of the money, or because of the algorithm, or because of any other reason like that. It's because his content is too important, and you never know what may save someone's life.
The way I view it is every single video that we make has a potential to reach someone. Because if we're just doing 2 or 3 videos per month, great. If that's all we can do, fine. But you never know what particular video is going to appeal to a particular person at a particular point in their lives.
And we're not going to dwell on debunking the importance on some dude making commentary videos about cult propaganda, because it seemed like he had the credentials from people we were told work for him. We already heard about Kim Silvio, who Lloyd described as the head of operations of JW Watch and a legal consultant. There was also Mark O'Donnell, who collaborated with The Atlantic on a piece about CSA and the Jehovah's Witness religion, and who actually sat down on legal battles between the cult and its victims to give the viewers and readers insight into how those battles played out, getting involved in speaking as a witness or helping connect the witness and victims with attorneys. Lloyd liked to report on all of this as if this was something that his organization or his company was doing, and that he was in some way involved. But neither Kim Silvio, nor Mark O'Donnell, nor any moderator, translator, or legal representative I was able to find actually worked for Lloyd. They all volunteered for Lloyd. All of those titles of head of operation and legal consultant didn't describe a paid role. They were merely pretend titles that Lloyd came up with to, I assume, make it sound official that he had someone to help him day to day and who he could ask about law stuff when he was dumbfounded. None of the multiple donations and the multiple live streams that Lloyd did with them, sometimes exclusively to talk about, for example, a case that Mark was reporting on, actually went to Mark or anyone else but Lloyd. Lloyd monetized his platform by giving his acquaintances nothing but fancy-looking titles in exchange for their hard and tireless work. And he kept all the money that work was producing. It would have been fine if anybody at any point had any confirmation that none of their donations were reaching anyone but Lloyd. But that's obviously not how Lloyd wanted to present things. And for a moment, all of this house of cards that he had built with lazy video production and unpaid labor seemed to be in equilibrium as he reached the Faithless Forum of 2021, where he forgot that his iPad at home was connected to the same account and ended up sharing to his iPad some images in a chain of events that would not only bring an end to his marriage, but to his entire career. On January 31st, 2022, Kim Silvio posted to the ExJW subreddit a message that would end up bringing the downfall of Lloyd Evans. In that post, now deleted, she accused Lloyd of cheating on his wife for multiple years with sex workers using funds raised for activism. Lloyd at the time had been in the middle of a break for what he said were mental health reasons, but Kim's post gave a new angle to see it through. According to Kim, Lloyd's reasons to take a break and traveling to Thailand were not only to get his mind off things, but his nuts too. Kim's post basically painted a picture of a man pretending he's going through mental health issues to get sympathy from people as he traveled to Thailand and engaged in sex work. The post was removed almost immediately. It had some very big allegations. Nobody knew if it was actually Kim, and it came out of nowhere, so people didn't know what to do with it. And it would have probably been forgotten, except Lloyd knew exactly what to do. Lloyd decided to cut his vacation short, travel back, and start the livestream that would end his career. This livestream was plagued by technical issues from the beginning, starting with him being in mute and with the camera and audio going and coming over and over again throughout the hour and 38 minutes that this stream dragged for. In this livestream, he spends almost as much time trying to get the livestream going as he spends actually talking. It's extremely cringy seeing him talk to the camera in mute as the chat goes crazy for several minutes saying that he has no audio until he finally reads the comments and realizes what's happening. And instead of blaming it all on his incompetence, he actually floats the idea that what's probably happening is that someone is sabotaging his live stream because someone is probably connected to Kim and they're using the connection to mute his microphone.
Oh. I wonder if it's been tampered with. Because someone else has access to my StreamYard who is friend. I don't want to start any. I should probably leave it there. But it's interesting how. No, surely not. Someone else has access to my StreamYard and they're connected to Kim. And I really, really hope that they're not sabotaging it by muting my microphone.
But when he finally talks about things, he doesn't just tell you what happened for you to be the judge. He starts crafting a huge narrative by making a giant strawman argument about Kim Silvio.
Because a friend who I confided in has decided that I am some kind of supervillain. I haven't raped anyone. I haven't committed any kind of sexual offence. I haven't covered up child abuse. I haven't arranged for families to be separated or shunned. I haven't murdered anyone. No seal cubs have been bludgeoned by my hand. No cats have been run over knowingly by me.
Prefacing everything by saying how terrible sexual repression is to an audience that's filled with people that have been sexually repressed and have somehow managed to not cheat on their spouses.
It's nobody's business. It just isn't. But apparently you all need to know what I do with my dick. I was subjected to sexual repression. Like many of you watching, I was told, you're not allowed to wank, you're not allowed to be gay, you're not allowed to have sex outside of marriage. Oh, and by the way, if you do get married, you're not allowed to get married to someone who isn't a Jehovah's Witness. Oh, and just another little caveat on this list, no porn. You know?
Saying that he didn't have any affairs as he's confirming that he did.
So, because things were less than ideal in my marriage, I went outside my marriage. Who with is, again, none of this is anyone's business, but there were no affairs, there were no... Because I haven't really wanted a relationship with anyone else, I haven't looked for one, but I have looked for sex.
And then confirming pretty much everything that Kim ever said, starting with him saying how he cheated on his wife Diana, who directly asked Lloyd not to talk about her when she found pictures of him cheating while he was out at the Faithless Forum.
All of this came to a head recently. The situation, now my camera stopped. The situation came to a head very recently when Diana made a discovery. It was actually following my trip to Austin. I wasn't unfaithful in Austin, but I did, Diana did see some pictures that caused questions to be asked. That's all I'm going to say about that. And things came to a head, and I was forced to be very open with Diana about the problems in our relationship.
For some reason, he says that his wife wasn't satisfying him sexually, and that's why he was forced to go outside of his marriage. Almost like there was absolutely no other option, like he was cornered by his wife.
And I hoped, or I really, really hoped that when I got married, everything would be normal. I wouldn't need porn. I wouldn't need chat sites. I wouldn't need any of that. It would be enough that my wife would be enough. And the weird thing was, that's not how it worked.
He then describes this disturbing scenario where he admits that when Diana found out about his infidelities, he not only had nothing to regret, but he actually persuaded his wife into letting him leave her and his little girls for an indefinite amount of time to go to Thailand and figure out how happy he could be without them.
I need to get away. I need to, for reasons I won't go into, I decided that I needed to go away by myself and figure things out and figure out what I wanted. Quite frankly, I wanted to know whether I could be by myself. I wanted to know whether it was even possible for me to exist without my marriage. Now the camera's cut out again. I wanted to know whether it was even possible for me to exist without my marriage and without everything that I have. So I got on a plane and I fucked off. You know?
And we got some memorable quotes as soon as he got challenged.
Ah, Brandon's got an opinion. Quit blaming a victim, dude. You cheat on your wife. It isn't about the org. Focus on you and your family. Yes, I cheated on my wife. But Brandon, Mr. kind of saintly Brandon, who's never done anything wrong in his life and has always had total mastery over his penis.
You can see how he's extremely mad whenever anyone pushes any other narrative than the narrative he is pushing. And you may be wondering, what is this narrative that he's pushing to try to pretend to be the victim? After cheating on his wife repeatedly for years and then leaving his family to just keep at it. Well, he's pretending that he's the victim because Kim Silvio violated his privacy by saying that stuff out loud. That's it. That's why he's the victim in this scenario.
But Kim Silvio, retired lawyer, former JW Watch team member, has decided that my private life needs to be known by everybody. And so Kim Silvio has made a post on Reddit, it seems, or at least someone pretending to be Kim Silvio has made a post on Reddit, which, to the credit of the moderators, has been taken down, but not before it could deliver its payload. Not before it could grossly invade my privacy and my family's privacy, my wife's privacy, my children's privacy. Because they're going to grow up eventually, and they're going to want to know what's on the internet about their dad.
All throughout the live stream, you see him acting like the victim and interacting with every single super chat that goes his way, which keeps motivating people who are still not realizing what's going on to donate him to the tune of thousands of dollars. And after a while, he gets into exactly why he considers that Kim Silvio is the worst of the worst. He tells us how he told Kim and someone else that he had been cheating on his wife for years, that he was in trouble, and that he wanted to take a break from his family in Thailand. And he says how Kim in the beginning was super helpful, which means she can never change her mind about anything.
I was really touched that both producer Bob, I've got to be very careful to call her producer Bob and not use her real name, both producer Bob and Kim Silvio were massively understanding in the phone call, in the Zoom call. So they were super understanding.
He also shares for no reason these messages, telling us how he was suicidal and shedding the only tears he would shed throughout the entire video.
4 and a bit hours to New Year's Eve in Patong, where the party is. Just overwhelmed more than ever by how pointless it all is.
His main thesis is that he told Kim how he felt, and Kim was supportive, but then Kim changed his mind, and that's what she did wrong. It's very telling because he also slips and shares how momentarily his friend Javier wasn't immediately supportive, which made Lloyd mad enough to complain about him to Kim.
Full disclosure, I was pissed at Javi for going quiet on me during this period, because Javier Ortiz is basically my best friend. And for whatever reason, he kind of went quiet during this whole period, and it perplexed me. So I bitched about him a little bit. But I just want to say, for the record, he's since been amazing.
He keeps saying how Kim switched out of nowhere for no reason, and then proceeds to tell us the reason. Him playing the victim in social media for sympathy by sharing he had mental issues without contextualizing how it was his own fault for cheating and not for leaving the religion.
It all changed was when, and I'm not going to name him, but there was an individual who attempted suicide. It all happened on Twitter, so it was very public. And this is the message that I woke up to in Thailand. I'm going to wait for the camera to come back on because it's super distracting. As people think the world of you, and whether you like it or not, they look up to you. People have no idea what is going on in your life, They hear mental health and can automatically relate and associate their issues with yours. They can also think, well, if Lloyd can't do it, what's the point of me even trying? And then things like last night can happen. Is it fair to you? No. Should people hold you in this regard and have such expectations? No. Does it happen? Yes. It happens, therefore it's relevant. I gather this message may make you angry. However, I cannot stand by. I'm going to wait for the camera to come back on and watch this happen without having my say. And then in capital letters, Kim has written, get the fuck off social media. End capital letters. Or tell people exactly what's going on so they understand and don't conclude that they are, quote, feeling the same as you, end quote, exclamation mark. You can imagine how I felt waking up to this message and essentially being told, you're not responsible for an extra... I'm going to wait for the cameras to come back on. You're not responsible for an XJW attempting suicide, but you sort of are. And someone in my meltdown support group was, number one, ordering me what to do, number two, suggesting I might need to divulge private information about myself, and number three, suggesting or at least implying that I need to think about other people's mental health. So I replied, I don't like being ordered around like this, Kim. I will stay the fuck on social media, thanks, and continue to post responsibly.
It's telling how immediately Lloyd lashes back at Kim as soon as he perceived just a little bit of pushback, instead of thinking that, you know, maybe he was making a mistake. The next day, Kim told Lloyd that she wasn't going to keep volunteering her time for his company, which Lloyd immediately took personally.
Kim Silvio and producer Bob, who is good friends with Kim Silvio, both quit JW Watch. I have to say, it really, really messed with my head, because at the time I was still reeling from this existential situation I found myself in on New Year's Eve, and then someone goes from calling me to see how I am and being in regular contact and being very friendly and reassuring to abandoning me.
He then proceeds to read Kim's post and try to debunk it, while actually confirming everything there and then some.
Some weeks back, Lloyd openly and without warning notified me of his infidelity and engagement with prostitutes on a very regular basis. It was maybe, I'm going to say 2 or 3 months in between. I would go to see sex workers. I didn't have an opportunity to do it on a regular basis. I'm not sure I would need to. So that part is factually untrue and libelous, I'm going to say. Lloyd openly and without warning notified me of his infidelity and engagement with prostitutes on a very regular basis over many years. Many years? I think, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years. If that's many years, then fine. Kim continues, this was shortly before he notified the community that he would be taking a 2-month break from activism to reevaluate my life for the sake of my mental health. This is not correct. Damn well is, Kim. Damn well is. And also, you green-lighted the video where I said this. You listened to the audio and told me that it was good. Lloyd had been in Thailand. Kim offered to help me make arrangements for Thailand. Now my video is frozen again. This is not correct. Lloyd had been in Thailand making use of the many different facilities and getting to know the locals And apparently I had to ignore the locals and ignore other tourists when I arrive in Thailand. I had to shun everyone. Shortly after Christmas, only returning to Croatia a few days ago. It has often been said that activists are happy for individuals to be Jehovah's Witnesses, providing that they know the whole truth about the organisation. Lloyd's subscribers, support team and patrons are not being given the correct information. No, they're not being given information that they're not entitled to, but they're being given correct information. There are matters that he does not want the public to know about, justifiably, Kim, justifiably. Wanting rather to maintain a facade that appeals to those concerned. So I'm being shifty, I'm being sneaky. By keeping my personal and private life private, I'm being somehow surreptitious. And I'm misleading people, is the suggestion here. To show his narcissistic behaviour, deficit regard for the feelings of others, use of funding generated through his activism work to pay for prostitution, an industry known for the exploitation of women and minors, a solo non-mental health related trip to Thailand, and failure to be honest in respect to the true reason for his absence, would cause reproach to be brought upon his name and therefore must not be spoken about. So apparently I have to account for how I spend my money when this is my job. Well, like when a doctor receives money for helping people, apparently he needs to account for, you know, what holidays he goes on.
And he finalizes by saying how what Kim did somehow affects his family and continues to mention them by name to gain sympathy.
If it were just impacting me, my feelings on this whole situation would be completely different. If it were just about me and what I do with my dick, who cares? Who cares? But it impacts Deanna. It impacts 7-year-old Jessica. And it impacts 2-year-old Julia. It impacts all of us. It even impacts my in-laws downstairs who are currently looking after our 2 children.
Remember, the only thing that his kids are gonna find out is what he did. This is a classic move by narcissists, saying that sharing what they did against their victims somehow victimizes their victims further. Lloyd also compares getting sex work from the sex trafficking capital of the world with paying for a TV, which, you know, it's not comparable.
I mean, what do I need to give receipts? You know, do I need to run, if I buy a new fridge or a new TV or a new PlayStation, do I need to get permission from my patrons first? Either it's my job or it isn't. And how I spend my wages is no more anyone's business than how anyone spends their wages. It's either my job or it isn't, period. If there were strings attached and I had to account for how I spend my money that I've earned through my work, then I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. And I don't want anyone to be a patron who thinks that I owe that kind of level of detail.
Now, illegality is important. Technically, Patreon funds cannot be used for illegal purposes, so Patreons have a reasonable expectations that their funds will not be used for illegal activities, especially when the illegal activity is cheating on probably the most beloved member of the channel. Lloyd doesn't want people to think about that, and instead, he pushes the narrative that donations are the payment for this job, and that Kim abandoned him at his lowest, which is why she's a bad person, especially when she shows up in the chat.
Oh, she's here. Was I? Well, you certainly pretended to be. You certainly pretended that you were fine with everything, didn't you? You put up a good show. You put up a damn good show for days or weeks that you were fine with everything. Not once did you say. You even said that my taking a break video was good.
Then Lloyd puts up an insult for several minutes on screen and pretends he didn't notice while he actually looked at the screen directly several times. And it's telling how Lloyd keeps pushing the narrative that Kim sharing the message she shared equals her trying to destroy him, a supervillain, comparing himself to the cult he left instead of realizing that people can be both against the cult and his actions. And he closes the live stream by inviting you to be the judge of the situation, which I assume is facetious, and sharing the message of Javier, who would end up breaking his friendship with him just a few months later.
So, yeah, I'll let the audience adjudicate, you know? Are things as grave as Kim would like you to believe? You know, you be the judge. I just want to say, Lloyd, outside of fiddling kids, clubbing baby seals, or emptying my pockets, what you do in your personal life doesn't concern me. I'm here, your friend, without judgment. What Kim posted makes me feel really bad for Deanna.
And he didn't think this was enough. He went to post on Facebook confirming how he had used sex workers in Thailand, which is arguably the worst thing he did here. Both Croatia, where he lives, and Thailand, where he went, have massive issues with human trafficking. And it's here where Lloyd shows just how little self-awareness he has. If he had been a divorced dude engaging in sex work in Germany or the Netherlands, where it's fully legal and regulated, I would be the first guy to advocate for him. I have nothing against sex work. I think sex work, as long as it's safe and consensual for everybody, is as fine as any other kind of job you may have. But this is where him being in Croatia and going to Thailand actually factors in. Sex work isn't legalized in Croatia, and according to Wikipedia, it's a destination, source, and transit country for men, women, and children subjected to trafficking, with a whopping 22% of women in sex work being victims of labor exploitation. But those numbers pale in comparison to Thailand. Thailand is the human trafficking capital of the world, being so terrible that it's practically impossible to know whether the sex worker you're engaging with is being exploited or not. Over 600,000 people are victims of trafficking, with over 40,000 children being exploited in the sex trade. Multiple human rights organizations continue to beg people to not engage in sex work in Thailand, because they will almost inevitably end up funding directly or indirectly these issues. Lloyd didn't just abandon his family to pursue sexual relations in Thailand string-free. He engaged in this human trafficking monster of an industry, while at the same time pretending to be an advocate for victims of the same kind of abuse. There's no way that Lloyd would have been invited to ICSA or to almost any other organization to speak about the problems of abuse in their religion if they had known that he was engaging in sex work in Thailand or in Croatia for all that matters. But in Lloyd's mind, he was wrong and he was being abused. So he went onto the show of his also then friend Andrew Gold, who interviewed him on the show while knowing very little of the situation, but managed to offer some pushback towards Lloyd.
And look, a lot of people are unfaithful with their wives, with sex workers. And I think the issue that a lot of the community have, of course, is that you've been a leading advocate against sort of sex trafficking and that kind of thing. And that you had sort of a moral duty, I suppose, as the leader and the face of the Jehovah's Witnesses, to take care in that aspect, especially because, of course, many sex workers in, I believe it was Croatia and Thailand, will have been sex trafficked.
Well, I'm not a leader.
By admitting he's not a leader, he kind of admits that he's not really qualified to talk about these issues, which is what we were just saying. But then he goes into this diatribe where he says he did nothing wrong and is getting bullied.
But I think that it's very easy to slide from whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is crucial into bullying, and I think a conversation needs to be had about when does it stop being whistleblowing and when does it actually start being bullying. So when are you no longer giving legitimate criticism of an individual? When are you instead bullying an individual by shaming him over his private life, even though he hasn't actually done anything wrong? You're just trying to draw lines and pin something on him that he's not responsible for.
And he just ends up confirming yet again that all the things Kim Sylvia said were true, while continued to push the narrative that he's somehow the victim.
I suppose with prostitution, it's a blurry line with regards to consent and where that, you know, we don't know. That's the truth of it. You couldn't know a Thai prostitute.
Well, I dated a sex worker in Thailand.
It's also insane that, just like he says that talking about what he did to his wife is somehow disrespectful toward his wife, talking about sex trafficking in Thailand, the sex trafficking capital in the world, is somehow disrespectful towards the whole country.
There's a sort of, I don't want to say kind of racism about it, but, you know, to suggest that this is all that can be said about Thailand, this is the last word on Thailand. And that's not to minimize that there aren't huge problems with sex trafficking in Thailand, but to suggest that when you go to Thailand, oh well, it must be because of this, you know, it must be because of sex trafficking. Well, what you're doing then is you're in a way being incredibly condescending about an entire country. You know?
Lloyd keeps trying to push the narrative that people are saying that the only reason he went to Thailand was for sex work, and that wasn't the only reason he went there, completely missing the point that it doesn't matter if he went to Thailand exclusively for sex work or if that was in the bottom of his to-do list. What matters is that he engaged in sex work there, regardless of whether he was planning on doing that or not. However, Andrew ended up also interviewing Kim Sylvia a couple of days later, where she shared the issues that everybody was worried about.
Lloyd is an advocate for child sexual abuse. He's a core participant in the ExJW inquiry. He's been on many different media, had many different media opportunities. There's been a whole heap of things that he's been able to do in that role, and he cannot sidestep that. I saw a little bit of sidestepping. I'm not a leader, I'm not this. I'm like, come on, you cannot come back and sidestep at this point. You just can't. And I just really am frustrated with him that he fails to understand the relationship between his work and and the statistics relating. So simply say, oh, I didn't sleep with an underage sex worker, or I didn't. How do you know? And I'm not saying you did, but what I'm saying is the optics are really, really bad. And that the chances, if you look at the statistics around sex workers and, sex workers that were child sexual assault victims, that were child trafficked, that are in slavery situations where they have to continue working to pay off debts for their families, or their families are in fear of, I know of cases personally of things like that have happened. So, to just not be able to acknowledge, to simply say black and white, I didn't sleep with anyone under the age of 18 or engage in services of anyone under the age of 18. To me, that just shows a complete lack of understanding of the issues relating to child sexual assault victims and women that are trafficked, men that have been trafficked, boys, girls. I just find it really, it's tone deaf, in my opinion.
Andrew also ended up losing Lloyd's support in the process, obviously, and joining the lawsuit because, did I not mention that? Lloyd's also pretending that he has lawyers lined up to file a lawsuit against Kim Sylvia for defamation, and now Andrew looked to be in that too. And in the lawsuit turned out to be pretty much anybody who had been somewhat close to Lloyd and had done something as bad as retweeting something embarrassing about Thailand or him cheating. Weirdly enough, it didn't include the people who were saying he had groomed a 14-year-old.
You were grooming a 14-year-old. What? What?
But it did include Jake Vaughn from the ExJW channel Outwardly, who made a long and detailed video compiling all the allegations and making it easy for people in the community to know what happened while watching a single video. As a result of both Lloyd's livestream and the videos that were made about him later, he ended up losing the support of most of his Patreon, cutting his revenue in half, which to Lloyd is both a lot of money and practically no money, depending when you ask him.
For 2021, I think there were only 2 months in 2021 where the Patreon money was more than the Google ad revenue. So in other words, the Google ad revenue in 2021 was the most substantial money coming through for my activism work. So nobody can say when it comes to me spending my money, my personal funds on a given thing, oh, he's spent his Patreon money on this. No one can say that, because actually it's not just Patreon money, it's the Google ad revenue. I also have 2 books, so I receive royalties from that, etc., etc. I can remember telling Tibor, when we drop below 500, things are bad. And the truth is, we've been operating at less than 500 combined patrons and YouTube channel members for months now. So the fact that we've been able to carry on this long is, I guess you could say, a miracle.
He was disavowed by most of the people who were close to him, including victims of abuse he had victimized further, volunteers, interviewees, and friends. He got kicked out of a documentary he was working on, may mean that that documentary may actually look like a documentary, and lost pretty much everyone who was working for free for him after realizing what kind of person he actually was. Mark O'Donnell quietly separated from JW Watch and started his own website. Kim Silvio obviously stopped working with him. People stopped caring and watching his videos, and what's more, Lloyd lost the one thing he had been using, monetizing, and leveraging for his own gain: the approval and attention of the ExJW community. And that brings us to Lloyd today. After everything that happened, he privated his live stream to prevent any new followers from finding, heavily monitor his comment section to remove any mention of these events. And that is not as stupid as it might seem in the beginning. After all, his viewers are not like most viewers out there. His viewers consist of mostly waves of people on their way out of the religion, looking for information to challenge their beliefs. Once their beliefs have been changed and debunked, they don't usually stick around, and instead they move on to better things in life. Lloyd knew that if we waited for long enough, the followers he lost would inevitably be replaced by new followers who would be completely unaware of his past, and he has an invested interest in not letting them know about it. After making his live stream private, he started uploading again, uploading a video where he equates everyone who disagrees with him with cult thinking and with deviant enemies detracting from his important work.
I've long said, both in my book and on this channel, that ironically, the biggest pushback to my activism work has only ever come from fellow ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. We ex-JWs carry enormous emotional baggage from our cult experience, and sometimes this causes our community to cannibalize itself. We were raised in a group that taught us that if someone holds different views to us on certain key issues, it's not merely a case of agreeing to disagree. That person deserves to be eliminated imminently in a fiery apocalypse, along with everyone else who thinks as they do. I may not like it, but this is the reality I've been working with for over 10 years. Frustrating though it is, I consider the intense infighting and polarization in the ex-JW community to be an inevitable byproduct of the unhealthy and toxic thinking that was coded into many of us from birth.
He was forced to stop filming in his studio. Remember, Lloyd and his family didn't live by themselves. They lived in Lloyd's in-laws' house, and Lloyd filmed in their basement. Lloyd said that the issue wasn't the cheating and victimizing of his wife, you know, the daughter of the owners of the house, but a mold issue. And just a year after his livestream, he was already trying to capitalize on his new followers, literally putting his hand out asking for donations in a super professionally filmed video where you see his amazing audio and lighting skills.
Hello viewers, this is going to be a tough video to make. As you can see from the title, things aren't looking rosy at the moment, so I can already see people jumping up and down saying he's begging, he's begging.
In this embarrassing video, he hits the same points we have come to expect, over-exaggerating his accomplishments.
I have an amazing team working with me. I have Tibor, I have Diana working with me, and only really with that team and with the support of patrons and now YouTube members, and with the equipment we've been able to buy because of their support, are we able to produce not just the content that we're making, but the frequency of content, so that we're putting out a video at the moment sort of every day. Sometimes 2 videos per day if you count the shorts.
Blaming the consequences of his actions on vague enemies.
The defamation campaign is still very much ongoing. My lawyers are still on top of it. It's just that the Croatian legal system, I've learned, is glacially slow, and it's probably going to be years before I see any kind of justice for what was done to me and my family. The defamation campaign was and is a failure. It was a really cruel, sadistic way of attacking my reputation, and it had the predictable effect of drastically reducing the number of patrons who support my work.
And threatening with firing the editor he employs in person for some reason and stop giving money to the mother of his children if you don't donate.
It could be that I have to dissolve my company. It could be that I have to let Tibor go, let Diana go, and just be doing it by myself, and that would involve, because I know I would no longer have Tibor and I would be editing the videos myself, I would probably go down to like 2 or 3 videos per month, which I think would be something of a tragedy.
And it worked. That is exactly how the cult that his audience left operates. So it's not surprising to see that the same manipulative tactics worked when he applied them on people whom those tactics have been proved to work before.
3 days later, we have 556 patrons and 110 YouTube channel members, making for a combined total, and I'm not kidding here, of 666 patrons and YouTube members, which is just incredible. Read into that number what you will. I promise I'm not making it up.
This up in Patreons empowered him to fight against the haters, who were explaining the reason why Lloyd lost Patreons in the comments, and demonized them, even though some of them were doing kind of hilarious things.
I was accused of being involved in sex tourism simply for choosing Thailand as a holiday destination during a mental health crisis. I've had packages sent to my home containing books with titles such as Leave a Cheetah, Gain a Life.
After that, he's been trying to get into the atheist community of YouTube again, but suffice to say, the only ones willing to share a platform with him nowadays are either people who have no idea who Lloyd is, which, you know, it's most of the population, or people who are not too dissimilar to him, like Dr. Richard Carrier, practically the only person who has continued to make appearances after Lloyd's livestream, who mainly pushes a biblical narrative that's not seen as serious by most scholars, and who is also the recipient of accusations of sexual misconduct, which also disqualified him from participating in atheist events after being banned from Skepticon due to sexual harassment allegations. Besides that, Lloyd has been losing views regardless of his sins because the content he puts up is simply not up to the standards of the new generation. With TikTok running the attention span of most of us, the majority of viewers no longer want to see commentary videos of a rambling guy in his 40s alone in some room rambling about equally boring cult propaganda, because that's what his channel is nowadays. He very rarely makes scripted videos, or as he calls them, documentaries, and instead makes either unscripted videos responding to voicemails or loosely scripted videos reacting to cult propaganda, which he slices into smaller videos to be able to say he's putting up content daily. And how would he cut these videos into smaller videos if he didn't hire an editor? But despite having over 100,000 subscribers, he still struggles to get to over 10,000 views on his videos, with most of them getting between 3,000 and 6,000 views. He's been doing this for a long time, and there's only so many ways he can come up with to debunk cult propaganda, and nowadays, his viewers can tell. Whenever he tries to do a new series, like his recent try at Change My Mind debates with people of other faiths, he underperforms at best, or, well, look, Lloyd posted a video of him doing stand-up a while ago, and I think it sums up everything we've been talking about quite nicely. It perfectly encapsulates the constant battle between who he thinks he is, in this case, someone funny, against the reality of the situation, in this case, an audience filled with the real world. The audience is all for it, the cameras are rolling, everything is set for him to succeed, but he just ends up being his own worst enemy. He starts with some cringy commentary complaining about living in Croatia for some reason.
I've lived in Croatia for 13 years, and most of that time I was in Sisak, which, as we all know, is a really hot tourist destination. I'm confused as to why we don't see more videos promoting it. It has 3 rivers that flood a lot, and it has an oil refinery that you can smell for miles around. It's absolutely fantastic. Brilliant place to live.
And after a couple of poop jokes and a joke where he says that there are so many malls in the city that the city is gonna become a mall,
You'll reach a critical mass, and all you'll need to do is just kind of knock through the walls between them to make Zagreb one giant shopping mall.
he forgets he's there to make jokes. And, well, you know that scene where the main character gets a microphone or some attention or whatever and gets comfortable and then just ends up saying the most embarrassing thing in front of everybody? Well,
So I did the only logical thing, which is set up a YouTube channel which now has 108,000 subscribers to explain why it's a cult. And thank you. And if you want to check it out, it's my name, Lloyd Evans. Please add to my subscribers, because what the hell, you know? But you should be warned, some of the content in there is of a sexual nature. There are so many rules that you grow up with when you're a Jehovah's Witness. It's like you're not allowed to f*** anyone outside of your religion. You're not allowed to f*** anyone who is your gender. You're not allowed to f*** anyone that you're not married to. You're not allowed to look at porn. And you're not allowed to wank. You're not allowed to masturbate. And what's funny is that parents have to have this conversation, which I think all parents have to have at some point, about sex, you know? They have to have the talk. And I'm still scarred by the talk that my dad had with me, which was actually while we were doing preaching. And going round from door to door, and in between, we went down some alleyway, and he started talking to me about what boys do in the changing rooms at school. And he said, you've got to know, Lloyd, that sometimes at school, when you're at school, in the toilets, some of the boys might touch their willies. And when they do that, their willies go big. But you shouldn't touch your willy, and you shouldn't touch theirs. That was pretty much the conversation. So what that did was, because I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was paranoid from that point forward that if I just even slightly touched it, it would just balloon in size, like one of those ramps that they have on planes when you need to jump off the plane. It's like, and you just fill the room. So thanks for that, Dad. And I obviously did end up wanking, but then feeling bad about it. So yeah, that's who I am. I'm Lloyd Evans, and I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and I live in Zagreb, and you have been an amazing audience. Thank you very much.
I have watched hundreds of hours of Lloyd Evans by now, and those few minutes are still the hardest minutes to watch out of his whole videography. Also, here's a clip of me doing stand-up for those people who think you can only criticize people who are doing stand-up if you've done stand-up before or whatever. So if you're one of the many people who have been either directly or indirectly wronged by Lloyd, or if you feel angry or upset at all of the things he has done, just remember how he thought cheating on his wife, doing that live stream, or even doing stand-up were all good ideas that he should do. Lloyd Evans is his own worst enemy. You don't need to bring him down. He's actively doing that all by himself. Oh man, does this mean I'm gonna be added to his fake lawsuit now?